Hi everyone, welcome to Pop's latest video. This morning we've got something slightly different for you. Earlier this year, Pops undertook a bit of a recruitment drive, and not for staff, but actually for new board members. So you might not be aware, but we are a charity and therefore we require a board of trustees who help guide and steer our work. And I have the great pleasure this morning of introducing our first new addition to the Pops board. So Simon, welcome. Simon, I'll let you tell everyone a bit more about yourself shortly, but just by way of brief introduction, you are a postgraduate researcher and lecturer at Nottingham Trent University. And Simon's studies focus on the experiences of men who've been convicted of murder, but are now serving life sentences in the community, often following really long sentences. So you've also worked as a consultant to human rights solicitors, the Samaritans, HMPPS, the Parole Board, and loads of charities within the criminal justice sector. So we are delighted to have you on our board. But what we'd really like to do this morning is find out a bit more about you as a person. So do you want to tell us a bit more about yourself?
Okay. So it's lovely to be here. And so what about me? When I think about myself, I think when am I most happy? And when I'm most happy is when I'm walking my two German Shepherds through the countryside. I live at the moment just south of Manchester, and I love walking through the back lanes and across the farmers' fields and seeing my dogs run. And I guess that's a bit different to how I maybe was 30 years ago when I was in my 20s, because my 20s were pretty much characterized by me kind of being obsessed by success and the career that I was working in the City of London, trying to earn loads of money. And what happened as a result of that is that I developed mental health problems, I developed problems with addiction, which really made a huge difference to my life and the life of others around me, particularly my family, of course. And so I kind of now find myself here reflecting on a life that's had a lot of ups and downs. I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 12 years ago. So for a big part of the last decade, I've kind of struggled with ill health. And really all that's done is make me understand how those people that are closest to me, my family, and my dogs, how important they are to me and how important it is that we have opportunities to do those things that make us happy with the people that we love.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I'm really interested in the research that you're currently involved in. It sounds like a really interesting piece of research. So would you tell me a bit more about the findings of that? What sorts of things are you discovering?
So my research was motivated by work that I've done in the criminal justice sector over the last 20 years, that I've been working with people convicted of really serious violent or sexual offences. And I guess the notion that locking people up for a long time then creates a kind of safe citizen on release. And a lot of people go through a kind of process of transformation in custody. But to me, when they come out from custody, they face a lot of barriers. So there are a lot of stigmas for people convicted of really serious offences. And for example, the notion that the probation service provides kind of protection, if you like, or support to these people is one that in my research doesn't really ring out as true, because a lot of supervision by probation in the community of people convicted of serious offences actually introduces a lot of barriers. So, simplistic things like barriers to relationships, barriers to employment, barriers to housing. But then when you look into this, you also discover that there are barriers to things like home contents insurance. So someone convicted of a really serious offence, when they come and perhaps they return to the family after that, then suddenly the whole family has kind of then got these barriers, so their contents insurance is no longer valid because there's someone with a conviction living there. And that might kind of seem trivial, but in terms of the person becoming a kind of full part of society, a full part of the family, the local community, there are an awful lot of barriers put in place. And so I think what my research is uncovering is the trauma of imprisonment and how that impacts on people, including people in custody, the families and staff that work within prison and with people with convictions, but also the amazing resilience sometimes that individuals and their families show, but that despite that amazing resilience, they still face so many barriers, and it can be such, and these are lifelong barriers that people face. And I'm just not sure really if the way that, people think about people with really serious convictions actually protect society or ultimately can damage parts of society and parts of local communities. So, so my research is focused on the actual experiences of people in the community after a long time in custody, and then looking at how that maps onto supervision practices by probation or interventions that are delivered in prison, and how it impacts on wider communities and families.
It's really great to hear you kind of take in the whole scope, not just the prisoner's experience, but the family's experience, the community's experience, how that all links together. That's something that obviously is POPS's concern, is that it's not just about the prisoner's experience on release, but also the impact on families and how not just the actual physical return of the person impacts, but also, as you say, like the policies and the structures that sit around that. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to find out more about that at some point. Can I ask you, how did you come to know about POPS?
So I was trying to figure this out because I seem to have had a lot of contact with POPS over the years. So I was working for a charity called Coaching Inside and Out a number of years ago, and we were delivering coaching to people in custody and in the community who, bit of a funny term, but were kind of viewed by perhaps social services as being on the edge of custody, so perhaps young people in South Manchester. And so that work put me into contact with Diane Curry. And because I thought there might be an overlap, I was particularly interested at that time in working to coach people on very long sentences. And Diane, I think, had been supporting people on really long sentences, including going away for a retreat in the hills, I think, with people who'd been released after long custodial periods. So I was keen to speak to Diane, and I came up to the POPS office and spent a couple of hours talking with Diane, and I think we must have, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of words that kind of came out between us, but it seemed to me that that Diane was amazing in a number of ways, but amazing partly because we seem to be agreeing with each other. And often when I talk to people about people convicted of really serious offences, I'm in a position where I'm trying to find common ground with them, but with Diane, I seem to find a lot of common ground very quickly, which was really refreshing. And since then, I've been involved in a number of events where I facilitated a day at a prison where POPs were presenting for HMPPS to the family support. I think it was when Lord Farmer launched the review of women in custody. I have shared a stage with POPs a couple of times, which I've always really enjoyed. So when I knew you were looking for trustees, it was something that I obviously wanted to apply for.
Brilliant. And what is it that you hope that you're going to bring to the board?
What I think makes a good trustee, and what I hope to bring to the board, is an understanding of the charity, but also an inquisitiveness, and so that in a safe setting of board meetings, that quite difficult questions about how the charity is moving forward can kind of be thrashed out, because this is a really difficult time for people in the criminal justice system because of COVID, but also because of changes to, for example, sentencing policy that look to be set out by the government. And so how POPs can best, serve the needs, I guess, of communities is something that I think there needs to be a kind of creative inquisitiveness that can be brought to board, but also with a solid understanding of the needs of the charity in terms of enabling the management team to do their job. And the role of the trustees in that is to ensure that the structures are in place so that the POPs can execute on its aims as a charity. So, in short, bringing a solid base and being part of a solid board that provides that, but also bringing this kind of inquisitive, creativity and curiosity about how things can change.
Well, talking about changes, I'm going to ask you one more question. If you could change one thing about the criminal justice system, what would it be?
I would change. I would challenge the notion that focusing on the individual and their need to change within the criminal justice system is a good approach. What I would, in my experience, people that are in prison and people that have committed really serious offences, it may be that they need to change. It may be there are some aspects of life. For myself, I had a battle with addiction over a number of years. But that I think the change that's required is in wider society. I think there are about 11 million people in this country that have got criminal convictions, which is probably 20% of the adult population, and yet it still carries such a stigma and creates so many barriers. So I think there needs to be a change in the criminal justice system that takes responsibility for supporting people affected by the criminal justice system, so people in prison, but also people that have been really adversely affected by unlawful acts. And it's a responsibility of everybody, of the person in prison, of families, of community, and of wider society, to support and create a safer society. I don't think it's just about one person at a time changing.
Simon, thank you so much for your time this morning. It has been really interesting talking to you, and we're really looking forward to welcoming you to the board. So thank you again.
Lovely. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.